Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Mere Tradition. It is a very special day for me. Many of you know that I talk about my Italian ancestry, and you don't believe me because my name is Kennedy Hall. But I have proof here with a fellow paesano that I am actually an Italian speaker. Abbiamo Signore Aurelio Porfiri si può dire. We have Aurelio Porfiri. He's an Italian scholar, composer, expert in Catholic traditionalism and sacred music and the subject of China, among other things. And he's the co-author with Bishop Athanasius Schneider of the bestseller, The Catholic Mass, already translated in several languages. It's a beautiful book. I have that as well, so check that out. He is a contributor of major Catholic and conservative blogs in Italy, France, and USA. The popular American magazine Inside the Vatican included him in the top 10 most influential people of 2021. That's quite the honor. Aurelio, thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So, he has written a book called The Right Hand of the Lord is Exalted, which is a very nice title. And the subtitle is A History of Catholic Traditionalism from Vatican II to Traditionis Custodes. And I can tell you, my friends, I've read many, many books on sort of Catholic traditionalism. And this one strikes me as if anyone's read Iota Unum by Amario, this is sort of Amerio, excuse me. This is kind of like a, it's not like that in the same sense where it's very, very cited almost in the academic sense, but it has the same spirit of this is the overview of everything that has happened, but it's a welcome addition because we're now 30 years or so since he wrote that. So this is has a lot of information in the recent years in traditionalism. So I thank you very much for writing this, Aurelio.
You are welcome.
So... And also, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, the book link is available in the description area for the podcast. So make sure you click that and get yourself a copy. So in the beginning of the book, you talk about how you say, I do not define myself as a traditionalist, even if some may think I am one. Obviously, many ideas held by a certain type of traditionalism are also my own. And in some respects, I am more of an extremist, I like that word, than mainstream traditionalism purports to be. But I do not like labels, nor do I like being part of a group of various coteries. And the question needs to be asked, as you say on page 4, what does the term traditionalism, of which we shall be concerned, connote? So what does it mean, Aurelio, in your opinion, to be a traditionalist? What is the definition of that you kind of work with in this book?
So basically, in the word traditionalism, I am perfectly fine with the part tradition because I love tradition. I am certainly a traditional person. Traditional not only in the Catholic sense of following certain tradition, liturgical, spiritual, theological, whatever, but also I'm traditional in a more general sense. Than the only Catholic one. So I'm certainly traditional. What I have problem is with the ism, because I also make this example in an article in 1 Peter 5 that I hope will be published soon. I am a supporter of community, but not a supporter of communism. So
Yeah.
they are two different things. I am a supporter of women that, as you know, in Italian we call also femmine, but I am not a supporter of feminism. So the ism, so this kind of making something good a thing, I think is something negative because it betray the real goal of the people that present themselves as traditionalists. We have never to forget that people identify themselves as Catholic traditionalists. So the house is always the Catholic Church. There are some people that think like the traditionalism is a kind of sub church, but this is not possible. So I have the problem with the sectarian side of traditionalism. And I don't mean every traditionalist like this. Of course, there are many very good people that identify as traditionalists. They are very reasonable, they understand very well. But I can see more and more this danger that is presenting itself in the in this very diverse movement.
It's interesting you say this because my viewers know that I obviously support the Society of St. Pius X, and I wrote a book on that last year.
Mm.
And but one of the things that I make sure I always include about what Archbishop Lefebvre said is they would say, you know, he's the godfather of the traditional movement, but he himself said, I am not the leader of a movement because
Exactly.
traditionalism, and you know, and obviously, you know, when we have colloquial conversations, labels make it easier, you know. So I'm a patriot, I'm
Yeah,
a
of course. I
conservative,
also use it.
yeah.
Of
But
course.
when we do get into the sort of realm of scholarly or journalistic or academic work, it is important to have the distinctions about what we mean by that, because the Catholic faith is not a museum. It's not, you know, everything was perfect before 1962,
That is not
because
true also.
it wasn't
That
true.
is the
Yeah.
point. It's not true. If the people read my book, they will see that I present also what was happening before 1962, that what come after 1962 is unthinkable without considering what happened before. And we don't have to forget that even if we consider like Pius XII a great pope, but a lot of things start to happen under his watch. So and then of course there is we discussed before, there is also the all the question of modernism. I mean, modernism was a huge crisis at the beginning of the 20th century. If one read, if the people can see one of my scaffold, I have a lot of books about modernism, and and I have also talked with experts on modernism, a Italian expert on Catholic modernism, and that was really huge. I mean, many priests were, you know, kind of fascinated with this kind of ideas. So one has to really stop to think that there is before the council everything was nice and good, after the council is the hell. I mean, of course, after the council we know the problems, we know the difficulties, we know the crisis. And I like what you say before about Archbishop Lefebvre, because certainly you were also referring to one of his meeting with Paul VI. Paul VI was very upset with him, and he said, "Oh, you want to be the Pope in my behalf?" And he say, "No, I never dare to present myself as a new Pope. I just want to contribute to reform the Catholic Church," but he never denied that Paul VI or John Paul II were the real popes, and he never presented himself as, you know, it's not like other branches of that we can collocate in traditionalism, like for example the Palmarian Church. You know, the Palmarian Church, they do their own pope. I mean, they go really for their own way. Is really another thing. But here, uh, no. So Archbishop Lefebvre certainly he never pretend to be the new pope. He only wants to reform the church that is so in crisis.
Yeah. And if we could keep on the modernism thing for just a second, I think one of the big problems is that, well, I'm 36 years old. I'm the product of public education. So,
Good for you.
well, thank you. Since I finished my, formal education, 12 years ago or whatever it was, I've had to re-educate myself and learn that most of what I learned was wrong. And one of the problems with the modern public education, no matter which country, because we were talking before, I attended grade 8 in Italy in La
Yeah.
Terza Media. It's like, grade 8.
Yeah.
And I look back on what I studied, and there were some good things. The Italian school is more rigorous than Canadian school in certain disciplines. But my teacher she was a communist. I can't remember her name. I
Yeah.
think it was Signora Valentina or something like that. But she was part of the Communist Party, and everyone knew that. And we're talking about Charles Darwin and things like that in the classroom. So we're very historically ignorant. So I just finished this book that's coming out next year from Sophia, and it's on modernism. It's called "What Happened to the Crisis." Oh, sorry, what happened to Catholicism, the heresy behind the crisis. And really, what I do is I go through the encyclical Pascendi by Pius X, which is it might be one of the most important documents in church history. It really is. It's a magnificent document. It's very hard to read, but it's a magnificent document.
Yeah.
And this is 1907 is the point. So if he's
Yeah.
writing this document in 1907 and he's talking
Yes.
about the greatest heresy, if it's the synthesis of all heresies, it is the greatest heresy in the history of the
Yeah.
church. It's the worst.
Of course.
If someone said it's a disease with all the diseases, it would be the worst disease.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is happening over 100 years ago. So clearly there have to have been issues. And he fought valiantly, but then we have the period of the two wars and the Great Depression and the revolutions. And this was fertile breeding ground for the infiltration of modernism. So it must still be around. It's historically ignorant to say that it was fine before, because they wouldn't have had to fight it if it was fine.
Yeah, indeed. There are some, even in the traditional movement, that read modernism in a kind of different way, because some historian of modernism, they think that the end of this movement is with the death of Pius X. That I think was 1914, if I'm not mistaken. So the point is that the same St. Pius X, when people told him, "Oh, like you will be remembered as the one that defeat modernism," he say, "No, I didn't defeat it. I just win some battles, but certainly I didn't win the war." And indeed, we have to say that modernism, as usually people of this side are, they were very very clever, because they were able to go undercover in a certain way. They enter in never openly, of course, calling themselves as modernists, as many modernists do. For example, Ernesto Buonaiuti, that is one of the three big names of modernism. There are three famous names. One is Ernesto Buonaiuti, Italian. The other is the Irish George Tyrrell, and the third one is the French Alfred Loisy. So these are the three names, household names. And but these others, they didn't call them any more modernists. They just use the ecumenical movement, the liturgical movement. They go into the social movement, like in Italy, for example, with the Democratic Party, a Christian Democratic Party, we say in English, Democrazia Cristiana. So they were very clever, and you know and they start to put these ideas slowly, and then of course this idea develop in people, and all this lead to what happened in the 60s.
Yeah.
That is not Vatican II only, because Vatican II, of course, is an important moment that no one can deny. It's a council, it's an ecumenical council, but that was basically the door that was used by a lot of these people to promote the agenda that often go even against the documents of Vatican II. For example, if we talk about the liturgy, Sacrosanctum Concilium, we see what happened with sacred music in the churches, but Sacrosanctum Concilium didn't say what what we experience now in our church. I have the possibility to talk of a lot of people that were in Vatican II. They were even instrumental in doing Sacrosanctum Concilium. I have one person that was a priest, and he was in the Commissione Piana. So it means even before the Vatican, he was one of the assistant of Monsignor Bugnini, or Father Bugnini. I know many of the assistants of Father Bugnini, and I talk with them openly. And I say, but what would Father Bugnini think if he would see what is happening now? Because sometimes the people, see, yeah, Bugnini is like this, like that. But I think, I'm studying also Bugnini because I plan to write a book about him also. And I say, but the things are more complex. In any case, it's obvious that you cannot understand what happened after Vatican II if you don't understand well what happened before Vatican II. And I'm not only referring to modernism, but also to Catholic liberalism, to humanism, Jansenism. I mean, we can talk a lot about this. But so it's, I think, preposterous to say, oh, before was everything good and now it's no, it's not like this.
Okay, that's great. So let's talk about two things here. You mentioned humanism, and then that the modernists kind of went underground after Pius X, and that has been documented. There's a book by the Portuguese scholar Guimarães, I think is his name, and it's The Murky Waters of Vatican II, and he has citations in there. I've included them in my forthcoming book, where these men who are modernists, and admittedly so in their correspondence, these letters are released after their death and thing like that, and they say very clearly, well, Pius X, he kind of smashed down that modernism thing, so we're going to have to call it something else now. And so the point is that it just sort of, it didn't really go away. And by the time we get to the 1940s and 50s, we have Pius XII, who was obviously very good, but there were, sort of political problems around him and so forth.
Yeah.
But he wrote the encyclical Humani Generis. And from my interpretation of it, I think ours are similar from reading your book. He was essentially going after this movement, La Nouvelle Théologie. And today in the church, the Nouvelle Théologie is seen. It's okay. The Nouvelle Théologie is seen as the conservative thing. It's seen as Bishop Barron is Nouvelle Théologie.
Yes.
Most of the Catholic scholars at the conservative Catholic universities. But at the time, I have a citation in my book as well. Cardinal Ratzinger, who was very much kind of, I don't know if he was a strict Nouvelle Théologie, but many of his ideas are pointed to. And when he was a student at the University of Munich, he was suspected of modernism, which is an uncomfortable fact for a lot of people. But this was the reality at the time. So maybe we can talk about how before we get to humanism, because I think there's a portion in your book which I think speaks volumes to that. What people will say, well, Nouvelle Théologie hasn't really been condemned by name and so forth. Well, maybe it kind of was, but how is the Nouvelle Théologie really kind of the offspring of modernism? Maybe we could say it's neo-modernism. What is the connection there?
Yes, because a lot of the ideas that modernism was presenting, like we have to embrace the world and blah 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 blah, of course, were recuperated by some theologians. That I would not say that Nouvelle Théologie is a movement in a certain way. Like is a name that is given to many kind of theologians that were also very different. And I have to say, some of them, they were really also outstanding thinkers. I mean, we don't have to forget that they, like Delubac, certainly has done something problematic, but he also done something very scholarly, valid, and also one that is very ill considered, like Congar, certainly is very problematic. But if you read these books, I read it, you can see that there is a scholar there. I mean, it's not simply so. What I would say is that they will they recuperate some of the idea. Like, you think, for example, or I talk about this in my book, of the movement of the, I don't know if in English say the I preti operai, how you say, the worker priest.
Yes.
Yeah, the worker priest, for example, is one of these. That we have to be like the worker. We don't have to have privileges. I mean, that is really confusing a lot of the aspect in the church. It's like today. I give an example. Today I make a reel for my YouTube channel, Ritorno a Itaca, and in this reel, I talk about the church that has to be poor. Of course, when we listen to this, we say, "Oh, that's very nice. It sounds very well. Oh, yeah." But if the church, my question in the reel is, if the church is poor, how can the church help the poor? Because, of course, it become the church herself in need of assistance.
Yeah.
So that's this is all the demagogy, the demagogy you say in English.
Demagogy, yeah.
Yes,
Demagogy,
the
yes.
demagogy. Sorry, all the demagogy that these people use. We have to include everyone. Oh, we have to accept everyone. But of course, the church have to reach everyone. That is for sure. Whatever is the condition, we are all sinners. So I don't think I am better than other people, but the church also have to reach people to present the beauty of her doctrine, not just to reach people for the sake of reaching them. So these theologians, they prepare the field for these ideas to become mainstream in the normal Catholic discussions, and then of course many of these ideas were implemented in some of the documents in Vatican II.
Yes, and I'm just quickly looking up something here because it has something to do with my next question. And what you remind me of, I'm going to go now to a portion of your book. So this is on page 97. And I'm going to read this, and there's a reason for it. So the context of this is November 13th, and this is 1964. And you write, Paul VI carried out one of the gestures which made him famous. He renounced his tiara. And here we read how L'Osservatore Romano remembered this in 2019. So in 1964, in the council hall, an important step in recent church history was made. On that day in St. Peter's, the Melkite patriarch Maximos IV, Sag of Antioch, in full communion with the Holy See, celebrated in the presence of the Pope, together with the bishops and others, the Mass according to the rite of his church. And at the end of the liturgy, the Secretary General of the Council, Archbishop Pericle Felici, informed the Council Fathers and the faithful present of an important, very particular decision of the Pope. He reminded them that during the Council, hunger and world poverty were often spoke of with great concern, adding that the Church has always demonstrated its love for the poor. It was also followed the example of its divine founder, and for this reason is called the mother of the poor, of the oppressed, of the disinherited, of the needy, and of the unfortunate. The Pope now desired to give a new sign of his love and mercy, and thus would donate to the poor his personal tiara. Paul VI then approached the altar of the confession in the Basilica of St. Peter's and deposed his tiara on it, which had been the gift of artisans of his former diocese of Milan. In the hall, one heard a loud and prolonged applause from the Council Fathers. And you write, Don Thierry Gaudret of the Society of St. Pius X read this gesture thus. That November 13, 1964 was symbolic when Paul VI deposed the tiara and the sign of the fullness of his powers. So when I read this passage, now I'm not accusing Paul VI of being Judas. I'm not saying that. But this does remind me of in the Gospels when Judas basically says, why don't we sell all these special things we have and we can give this money to the poor? And Christ says to him, you're forgetting that you're always going to have the poor. And it's one of these gestures that looks like a big deal. Look at us. We don't need these special decorations. We are one with the poor and so on and so forth. However, if the church is going to be the leader of the world and the kingship of Christ is going to reign, it is befitting of a king to look kingly. It is befitting of the station of a king to be royal. And this seems to me, this is at the heart of the sort of humanism behind this spirit that's been in the church for a century or so, where if we could say something about traditionalism versus modernism, let's say, the modernist and even some of the council intuitions, God exists in a way for the glorification of man, whereas man, for the traditionalist or the traditionally minded Catholic, exists for the glorification of God. That's kind of the impression that I get here. Does that make sense? Do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, that is one of I think the trend that happened, especially after Vatican II, and I would call this trend the giving away of symbols. But the problem is that it's really wrong to give away symbols. I give you another example. You mentioned the tiara, no, the I describe in my book. I give you the example of something that Pope Francis has decided recently, and that, with the utmost respect for Pope Francis, I explain why I don't think it's a good idea. He say then when he will die, he doesn't want his body to be shown to the faithful. No, um, like when we go to pay homage to the that pontiffs. I go for the last two, John Paul II and Benedict XVI, but he say he doesn't want. Now, I don't know if he still confirm that, but what I say is that that kind of decision should not be a private decision, because the Pope, in a certain way, belong to the faithful. And so I don't think it's right to deny the faithful the right to pay homage to their supreme shepherd in that moment. So, because that is a symbol, the body of the Pope, of course, belong to the private person, but as a Pope, belong to the people. That there are also books about called the bodies of the popes, uh, because of course the body is also a symbol. This is something similar to the issue of the tiara. Is this idea that if you give away symbols, the people will accept you more? No, I don't think it's true. I don't think that the people will only feel and perceive that you are giving away what you are, and to become more pleasurable to the world. But that is not our goal. Is not our outcome to be. I always say no. I really don't like to when the people say to me, "Oh, we follow what you say." Well, I said, "But look, don't look at me as a model of anything. I mean, I'm a sinner. I'm a full blown sinner. There is no doubt about that. I can really, I can only be ashamed of my sins. What I do, I only point out important things, not because I am good, but because I think they are good. So that's the point. I don't put myself as I say, oh, follow me. No, indeed I said the opposite. Don't follow me, but try to follow what I tell you to follow, even if sometimes I am weak and I'm not good myself to be up to the standard. So I think it's very important to understand that I don't defend these symbols because I think I am a special person, but because I think they are important. And when I defend these things, it's because myself first need these things. I is the nourishment that I need first.
Um, it's interesting you say that because being in the milieu that I'm in, many supporters, but many detractors, of course. And one of the things that people will always say to me is, "Well, Kennedy, you're just some guy. You're not the Pope or whatever." And of course, I'm not. But I always say I don't have opinions. I mean, I do, but when I write my books and my articles and my podcasts and things, I do my best. I'm always reading or relaying or transmitting something that someone who did have authority has said. It's not my ideas. It's, Saint so and so or church father or Thomas Aquinas or so forth. And the church has told us that we are supposed to go to Aquinas when we want to understand the sort of official theology of the church. Obviously, there are other beautiful theologies, but it's not
Yeah,
me.
and what I think we are doing is just to present in a new way
Yeah.
these old things. So it's not about Kennedy, or it's not about Aurelio. It's not about. It's about what we say, despite what can be our own personal journey. But the point is that when I read your book, I don't think that you want to present yourself as an example. It's just you want to point out important things you have understood, and that probably you re-elaborate in a way that is appealing also to the people of today, and that's it. So I think it's very important to understand that, returning to the issue of the symbols, that the symbols are important because they communicate to us about a reality that, of course, is beyond the the daily life.
Mhm.
This idea that we have to meet the man in his daily life, or the woman in her daily life. But I mean, also this is a kind of weird thing, because what we have to do is to allow that these people can feel the supernatural presence. So give them a sort of escape from the daily life, but not an escape like they have to refuse their daily life, but because they have to be in the presence of God. There are very beautiful texts of Divo Barsotti, for example, that is a very famous Italian mystic, and now is a venerable also. And there are very beautiful books. I have a collection. He published more than 150 books. There are few that are translated in English, and some I was involved in that. There is one very beautiful one of his masterwork called The Motionless Escape, I think in English, La fuga immobile. Yeah, I mean, this is what he say. We have to be in the presence. He write the presence with the capital P. That is so. This is what is at the end, and I think this is also one of the more representative element of traditionalism. I mean, this is why I respect a lot of people in the traditionalist world, because what they want is just to make sense of the situation they are living, we are living, and to feel, the kind of sense of sacred adoration, that sense of supernatural that unfortunately we don't feel anymore in a lot of our liturgies. This is why I always talk that I like very much to be in empty churches, because in empty churches, I mean, especially in Rome, we have these very beautiful churches. No, so you go there, you are surrounded by beauty, and then you feel, in that silence, that the kind of presence that you don't feel in many of the liturgies that we are given to live, because they are. I talk about the Novus Ordo, of course. No, that is the liturgy where the vast majority of people go,
Yeah.
and that they are profanated by, show priest, or by indignant song, or similar things.
Exactly. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. One thing that I find is interesting, having studied modernism, modernists are so concerned with feelings and, the
Yeah,
subconscious religious experience,
yeah, of course.
which I find so interesting because, quite frankly, the liturgy that should be the most appealing to the modernists should probably be the traditional Latin Mass, because it's there where the sort of ineffable, mysterious character of the divine, to use their words, that's where it is. Funny enough, and Pius X said this. He said submodernists will be very amenable, very complimentary to the traditional customs, because that's where the religious sentiment is alive in people. It's a wrong method. It's a wrong method of understanding it, but the insight does make sense. And we see this when you look into the history of Pope Francis, when he became the Jesuit superior in Argentina, and he goes out and he was upsetting many of his subordinates, because he was making them do novenas and adoration and pray the rosary and things. But it wasn't for reasons of, let's say, a traditional Catholic devotion, but it was because when you go out into the country, when you see the campesinos, when you go out into the peripheries, that's how they worship. So you need to be able to involve yourself in their things, because that's what's important to them culturally. So it is ironic that the modernists care so much about the feelings, but then they sort of force people to go to a liturgy where all of those supernatural elements are missing, which I see as one
But
of just,
I hope one day you will have the possibility of inviting me again, and we will talk about the issue and the difference between sentiment and
yes,
sentimentality,
yeah,
because that is one of the key point
yeah,
here.
yeah,
Of course, in the traditional liturgy, there are feelings, that there is sentiment, but not sentimentality.
yeah.
That is the basic difference. So, but this really would be so huge that here I don't think there is a lot of
No,
time
there's
to
not
talk
time.
about it. Yeah.
Last thing I want to say. This is the recommendation from Bishop Schneider on your book, the blurb on the back. And he says, Porfide's book gives us informative insights into the arduous endeavors of both the clergy and the laity to reestablish the Church's constant doctrinal and liturgical tradition as the consistently proven way for overcoming the crisis. So if we could say just quickly here, is it the case that to overcome the crisis, we must sort of recapture the tradition, if not the traditionalism? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
I think it's exactly this. I cannot add other things. It's exactly, we have to return to tradition,
mhm.
and we have to be aware of the danger of traditionalism.
Okay. Well put. Before we go, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you Aurelio's Substack, and it is called Cantus, and it's cantus.substack.com. And I'll just enter it for now. And a lot of work here is on sacred music. And one of my good friends is Dr. Peter Kwasniewski, and I love his work. And he and I have talked about this, and that really is almost like a heavenly gateway is sacred music, and people need to understand that better, because it's not just music. It's it's sort of the height of prayer in a sense of the church, and
Yes.
it's a very beautiful thing. So check out his work on
Yes.
that as well. And also, again, you can find his book, The Right Hand of the Lord is Exalted. Here is the book available from Sophia. There's a link in the description area for that, and I will let the listeners know a little secret. If you click the link underneath me, I might even get a percentage as a sort of kickback from it. So please make sure
Good.
you click that as well. And it's been a real pleasure to talk to you, Aurelio. And anything
Thank
else
you.
that you'd like to tell us before we sign off here?
No, I just want to thank you and all the people that will listen to this video. And I just want to say that when we are able to talk about this topic in a very reasonable way, in a very calm way, without being too fanatics, I think is the best thing, because help us to understand sometimes the reason of the others, and the other maybe will understand our reason, and they will be willing to, to come closer to us, and I mean, to maybe see that what we say is not so wrong or unreasonable. So I think I really enjoy talking with you in this manner.
Well, thank you. Forse la prossima volta si può parlare in italiano per un interview.
Okay, yeah, would be good. Yes.
Well, on a different channel, we'll do an Italian interview.
Okay.
But ladies and gentlemen, click the links in the description for everything I've described. And last thing is, I'll be in Italy for the first time since I haven't been there in, oh my goodness, 18 years. I miss it very much.
Oh,
And I'll be on a pilgrimage, and you can find the links for that, ladies and gentlemen. The registration for that will close in, I think, 8 or 9 days. So last chance to go on a pilgrimage with Father Albert Caglio, is a traditional Dominican. And we're going to be visiting Rome, the Amalfi Coast, Florence, Assisi, and I believe those are the 4 spots we're going to be. So check that out, ladies and gentlemen. And that's all. So this has been another edition of Mere Tradition, my friends. And until next time, God bless you all, and thank you, Aurelio.
thank you.